I'm Cassidy.
And I'm Kennedy.
And this is Threads of Wealth.
There's so much noise in the wellness world. Do this, don't do that, buy everything.
H2 tab is really the opposite of that. It's a small habit that we've added that feels supportive instead of overwhelming.
You just drop a tablet into your water and it turns into hydrogen-rich water that helps with energy, recovery, and hydration.
There's no powders, there's no flavor, and it's actually really simple to just drop it in and add it to whatever else you're already drinking. If you're craving simple, life-giving wellness, try H2 Tab. Use code Threads of Wealth for 10% off. That's Threads of Wealth, WELLTH, for 10% off. We love diving into the stories, struggles, and triumphs of people making powerful changes in their lives and the lives of others. Today, we have a truly inspiring guest, Sage Workinger-Brecka. She's a co-founder, wellness entrepreneur, and a voice for personalized health optimization. She stands alongside her husband, Gary Brecka, with whom she built a health empire focused on empowering individuals to take charge of their well-being. Sage, we're so excited you're here. Many people know of you through your work in wellness, but your path really started back in real estate. What ignited your transition into health optimization?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to be on this podcast. We're super excited. It's actually been a minute since I've done a podcast, so I'm excited to kind of get back into the swing of things. I was in real estate. My mom has been in real estate for over 40 years. And so I sort of was learning the business from her. And I went out to Vail, Colorado, and I was skiing one winter in 2015. And I got into a terrible car accident. And that led 2 years later to me ending up having to have a spinal fusion surgery. So my L5, S1 vertebrae is fused. Wow. And it was 2 years of just struggling with, constant chronic pain. And even though the surgery helped sort of take away this dead leg feeling, I had the nerves in my left leg were very numb. I ended up, it helped that piece, but my back was always kind of in pain. So we sort of went down this rabbit hole of trying to figure out other ways to get me out of pain other than having to be dependent on, Advil and pain medication. And that's, Gary, once he locks in on something he's interested in, he just goes hyper focus on it. And so that's kind of where we started with health optimization. Then we opened up our own clinic, started learning a lot about that. Sort of was because Gary was getting into hormone therapy and he wanted to learn more about it. And then we started diving into the benefits of IV therapy for nutrient deficiencies, stem cell and exosome therapy for, joints and things that people had issues going on trying to prevent surgery. And then we went really down the rabbit hole with red light therapy and hyperbaric chambers and cold plunging and, just long list of health and wellness things. So that's kind of where it all began.
Yeah, that's awesome. I actually have not a similar story, but I had back surgery when I was in high school too. And so I have a fusion with my L4 and my L5 vertebrae. And so I can kind of relate to the experience that, well, maybe you didn't have this experience, but as I was going through doctors and trying to seek help, I was always just told that you had back surgery. You're going to have to live with pain for the rest of your life. And you're going to have to get used to taking Advil or Tylenol if you want to feel 100%. And so what symptoms were you experiencing that made you or that led you to believe that conventional answers weren't just solving the problem for you and you wanted to kind of dive into it more?
One of the things okay, a lot of people think I'm crazy when they ask me what my favorite biohack is. It's cold plunging. It's totally because it helps my back. So if I sit too long, stand too long, lay down too long, anything too long, if I walk too long, it starts to just that pain starts to set in again. So cold plunging is my solution. So if I know I have to go to an event and I'm going to be in heels because I am not wearing flat shoes and pretty dress. Yep. So, I'll go jump in the cold plunge for 3 to 4 minutes. And that makes all the difference. It really does help a lot. And then I realized red light therapy and PMF grounding technology, that really helps. So there's a lot of different avenues that I've gone down, and then everybody goes, oh, you have to have all this equipment. No, you don't have to. Yes, it's convenient to have all the equipment, but you don't, or if you don't have access to a clinic that has that equipment, you can do just basic things like grounding is the same as PMF technology. If you can get your bare feet in dirt or sand or grass, that is has the same sort of qualities. The grounding qualities will help tremendously. It opens. I always try to explain it that it when you lay on a PMF mat or if you're grounding, it helps separate out the red blood cells. And then if you do a lot of deep breathing, breathwork techniques, then that helps put the oxygen into those separated out red blood cells. And then I like to do red light therapy, or you go out into the sunlight. Sunlight is God gave us the sun for a reason. And you sit in, my favorite thing is go to the beach, do a little beach walk in the morning. It just makes you feel alive. That's why people always love going to the beach for vacation, because they all those good items and the grounding and the sun and everything. It just makes you feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. Cassidy, we need to book a vacation to the beach. But
I know we're far away from the beach right now.
yeah. So with your, sorry, go ahead.
But no, I'm just saying, being in the mountains is amazing too.
That's true. That's very true.
Really all about being out in nature. I think it just rights the soul when you're, in a big city, I'm in Miami right now, and there's great benefits to it. But, I'm listening to sirens and there's chaos and there's traffic, there's, I don't know, back out into nature. I just feel like I can breathe easier.
Yeah, that's true.
And to your point about the sun, it's amazing how we've really victimized the sun, and how you go back and look at our ancestors, and that the sun was our original. I mean, everyone knew back in the day that that's healing. The sun is healing. Yep. And so I think it's really starting to be talked about more, the utilization of just getting out in the sun. When you're sick, go out in the sun. So I love to hear you talk about that.
Well, we can only make one vitamin on our own, and that's vitamin D3. And we get that from going out into the sun. And so many people are scared of it. They're scared to, and listen, I've gone through that too. I've been growing up in Florida. I've definitely, I've been sunburned, but I now that I think back on it, before I used to wear all the sunscreen and everything, I really didn't grow up wearing a whole lot of sunscreen. And if I was out in the sun enough in a row, then my skin just sort of naturally, it was fine, unless I stood out there for hours and hours and with no protection. But a lot of people, we wear long sleeves, we put on hats, we've got sunglasses, we're covering all our skin, and our D3 levels are just tanked. So if you're under the level on your LabCorp labs, it's 30 to 60 is within the normal range. We always like to tell our clients be in the optimal range, which is 60 and above. And that's because, it makes a lot of things feel better. When people say that when they wake up in the morning, they feel really achy, they had a really, hard workout the night before, and they wake up and their ankles are cracking and they just feel achy. Usually they have a D3 deficiency. When we went through COVID and all of the chaos with everybody's immune systems and people feeling like their immune systems were tanked, we told people to take D3K2. The K2 helps you absorb the D3, the vitamin D3 better. And also, zinc and vitamin C, very natural supplements, things that you could, buy at any local pharmacy or get through your food. And people thought we were nuts and that we were trying to sell snake oil. I was like, you don't have to buy anything. I wasn't even selling it, but I was like, get out in the sun, be near your friends, build your immune system. The masking and the 6 feet, distancing thing was the worst thing we could have ever done to our country or to the world, really. But yeah, D3 is extremely, extremely important. And so many people, the darker your skin is too, the harder it is for you to absorb the sun. So you really I always do tell people, get your levels checked. And then that is an important supplement to take if you're definitely if you're under 30. But optimal range is around 60, 65.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit going back to the cold plunging, and so I personally, Cassidy and I just talked about this a couple of weeks ago, how we both just absolutely despise cold plunging because we're naturally cold and it's freezing outside, so we just want to be warm. We just naturally gravitate towards the sauna or the sea room or something like that. And so I hear that has helped your back tremendously, and it probably would be mine too, but it just leads me to think that I think a lot of people fail to take ownership of their health, and they just kind of accept it to be, or talk it up to be genetics, or they were just kind of dealt a bad card in life or something like that. So when you experience or talk to people that kind of have that mindset, what do you tell them, or how do you encourage them to kind of step up a little bit and take ownership in their health?
I think that people hate to be uncomfortable, and we'd all prefer to do what's comfortable, do what's cozy, laying around watching a movie or doom scrolling on Instagram, other than, going out for a run or going to the gym and lifting heavy weights. But the more uncomfortable we make ourselves, the better it is, honestly. We need to get out there and move our bodies and lift weights and, raise our heart rate, because movement is just so good for you. With cooking, people think it's a pain to cook healthy meals at home. So they instantly turn towards fast food and processed food and boxed food. And that's not long term, that's just not good for you. So yes, it takes more time to cook a healthy meal at home. Yes, it hurts to go to the gym, but if you're doing it consistently, it will make you feel so much better. And I think that there's just a lot of people that feel intimidated by it. Maybe they're afraid of failure, that they'll hurt themselves, or, and I think just if everybody got out and moved and ate well, everybody'd feel better. And I always laugh and say, like, the world would be a better place if we were all active, because, you work those things out.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question? I feel like I've done it.
You did. No, you did. That was perfect. Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
What are, going off of that, what are three, just because I think that so many people overcomplicate it and they think that I have to do everything right all at one time, instead of taking it, if you've been going down a path of not being active, eating bad food, whatever else, they feel like they have to overturn their life in one day. Right. So what do you think are like three foundational things that every person should address first, and then you can move on to getting deeper into your health?
So I think number one, I think walking is very underrated. I think people feel like if they just go for a walk, it's not enough to make a difference. And that is furthest thing from the truth. We have had a lot of very heavy patients who have come to us, and over the years, people that need to lose over 100 pounds. Jelly Roll, the musician, is one of, and I remember came to us asking if we could help fat people. And we were like, that's kind of our specialty. He was so cute. He was scared. He thought we were going to immediately put him on this crazy diet and put him, go immediately to the gym and start getting on a treadmill and run 5 miles or something. I was like, no, literally, I want you to just talk. I just want you to think about walking to your mailbox. I want you to, the next day, I want you to think about walking to the end of the block. And the next day, I want you to think about walking around the block, and slowly but surely work your way up to walking what for him ended up being, his goal became a 5K. And then from there, it just grew and grew and grew. But that's where people who don't get out and move their bodies just start slow. And by no means you need to get out there and run a marathon. But if you just go for a daily walk every day, it's really great to go after a meal. I would prefer people went for a walk, a 10 or 15 minute walk after a meal 3 times a day, than trying to do all of it at one time. There's actually a lot of benefit to that. And then when it comes to food, I think nowadays with the internet and ChatGPT, literally the other day I was at home and I had a whole bunch of random ingredients in my fridge, and I had to cook for 20 people. And we're stuck in the mountains in the middle of nowhere, and I thought I had more food than I did. And I was like, okay, so I got on ChatGPT. I gave it all a list of ingredients that were in there that to me felt random. And they were like, okay, here's a list of 3 different things. I was like, I have kids, I have adults. They're like, here's something for the kids, here's something for the adults, something for everybody. And I don't think there's any excuse to not be able to figure out what you can cook at home. And then what was the third thing? Yeah, so I think diet and exercise are for sure 2 things people really need to focus on and make sure that they're doing well. And the third would be sleep. We spend a third of our life in bed, and that is very important to be doing it the right way. And a lot of people they're not setting themselves up correctly for sleep. They're waking up in the middle of the night. They can't get back to sleep. And if you're walking around just struggling throughout the day, you're never going to be able to run a business or be your best self or be, there for your family if you're just exhausted constantly.
Yeah.
What do you see in people that can't fall asleep or they wake up multiple times? Is there one key thing that people are missing when they go through struggles like that, or is it multiple?
I think it's multiple. For me personally, one of my things that besides, my back surgery and how we kind of ended up in the wellness space was figuring out genetic methylation. And what had happened is I went to the grocery store, bought a multivitamin thinking, I don't take a multivitamin. So, I'm on this health kick. I should take vitamins. So I'm going to pick this, random multivitamin that lines the shelves of every pharmacy in the country. I was getting some for my daughter too. That was actually what kind of preempted me from going to the pharmacy in the first place, was getting her on a vitamin. Thankfully, I picked the right vitamin for her, but I super screwed it up for myself. And over the course of 4 months, I slowly turned into a crazy person. I was not sleeping at all. I was wide awake, racing thoughts at night, couldn't fall asleep. Then when I did fall asleep, I was up, wide awake again at 3 or 4 in the morning, couldn't get back to sleep. So I was exhausted all day. And then I was suffering extreme anxiety, depression. I had terrible gut issues. And I was just miserable. All my lab values just tanked. My thyroid levels were off. My blood pressure was up, and my hormones were completely out of whack. I was 700% estrogen dominant. So my mood was very poor. In fact, it's the first and only time I've ever had thoughts of suicidal thoughts, that's when I was like, okay, something is terribly wrong and not normal here. And then it took me leading to a panic attack to have Gary was finally like, okay, this is not who you are. What is going on here? Mm-hmm. So we did all of this testing. And what I found is that I have a genetic mutation. It's called MTHFR. I personally just like to refer to it as the motherfucker gene. Look that out if you
I love that.
That works.
Yep. Best way to describe it.
It affects your mental state and it affects your gut. So that's where all of these things were going wrong because that gene was basically broken and I was not fixing it the right way. What I learned and discovered was by correcting it and fixing it by changing my supplements, getting off that multivitamin and on the right type of multivitamin, methylated multivitamin, it changed my life. I went back to normal, but not even normal. I was better than normal because then I was sleeping better. I was nutrient deficient. And back to the sleep part, I was critically low in vitamin B9, which is folate or 5-methylfolate. And so all I had to do was add that into my system, and I have to do it on a daily basis because I metabolize, we metabolize through everything we eat or drink. So I have to take that every day. And what I found is that since I have the MTHFR gene from both my parents, I needed a lot more folate than somebody else might who either didn't have that gene mutation or only had it from one parent. And so for me personally, if I take one capsule of 5-methylfolate at night, it quiets my mind. And then I also take a sleep supplement that has ashwagandha, tryptophan, what's in turkey that makes us sleepy after Thanksgiving dinner. Tart cherry juice is a great natural supplement for getting to sleep. I always recommend to parents to give their kids frozen cherries. My nieces love eating frozen cherries at night. That's their treat because it has natural melatonin in it. So you take a good sleep supplement and, and then I feel better. And then when I wake up at 4 a.m, because naturally I still do, I actually keep the 5-methylfolate by my bedside and I take another one then, and it just quiets my mind. It's not a sleeping pill. It's just like a quiet the squirrels pill for me personally. Now that's not the solution for everyone, but I have people that have that genetic mutation on both sides that the feedback is that it helps them tremendously. So, and then it quiets all the racing thoughts. But in addition to that, during the day, I take a multivitamin that has the correct form of vitamin B12. I can't take anything synthetic. It has to be methylated. And I take the full B, suite of B vitamins, zinc and magnesium. Magnesium is like so key at night for sleep. It's like I take all 8 forms at night. I have a supplement that I take and just put it in a drink and whack that down. And then I'm out like a light. So it was like a scary thing that happened for, the 4 months or whatever, but it was that silver lining of going, holy cow, now I realize where things could go wrong, how I can correct and fix them. Sorry, I'm kind of like babbling on, but one piece that was so interesting in between all of that, when I was having anxiety and depression and the gut issues and the sleep issues, my doctor, when I went to the doctor, I was like, something's wrong with me. They ran all the labs, and my labs, besides the estrogen dominance piece, looked pretty good. So they were like, well, your lab is pretty normal. And I'm like, something is not normal though. And they weren't figuring it out. And it showed that my B12 levels were sky high. But then at a cellular level with a different type of test, that's where it showed that my B12 levels were almost completely deficient. And it was because I was taking in the wrong form of B12. Which was the synthetic form called cyanocobalamin. So as long as I take methylcobalamin or hydroxycobalamin, which are 2 different forms, natural forms of B12, and I don't take folic acid, I take 5-methylfolate, then I'm fine. And I feel great energy and I sleep well. And but the doctor they prescribed me 4 different prescription medications for anti-anxiety, antidepressant, sleep medication, and a gut issue medication. And the only reason I didn't pick those prescriptions up and start taking them is because at the time we didn't have the money for it. So the only thing that stopped me, we didn't have health insurance, and it was going to be over $1,000 for those 4 medications. And I was like, I have to figure out something different. So.
Wow, that's crazy. Thanks for sharing that. Can you talk a little bit more about what MTHFR is? And you lived for a long time without knowing you had this. And so is there a way for people, like you said, you went and got your labs done and everything besides the estrogen seemed, pretty good. So is there a way for people to kind of identify that something might be off before going through an experience like you did? Or can you talk a little bit more about that?
So MTHFR, so methylation, let's start there. Methylation is the process by which you take in a raw material, either through diet or vitamins, and you convert it into a usable form. So I always use this example that you can't take crude oil out of the ground and put it right into your gas tank. You have to refine the crude oil into gasoline and then put it in your gas tank so your engine recognizes that fuel source so that your car can get up and go. Well, methylation is the same in our bodies. We take in a form of a nutrient in the form of either, through our diet or through a vitamin supplementation, and we convert it or methylate it into a usable form that our body understands. So for me, when I was taking in the synthetic form of B12 and B9, my body, because of MTHFR and a couple other, I have a couple of different, I'm very colorful in my genetic report. I have MTHFR, MTRR, AHCY, and COMT. So it's a lot of fancy words to just tell you that I have a lot of symptoms that a lot of people talk about where, so for MTHFR specifically though, it's very much linked to your mental state and things that have to do with the gut. So in my case, I not only have the 2 copies from my mom and my dad, but I have one specific suballele called C677T. There's another one called A1298C. So the C677T, relate that to anxiety. And anxiety is different than anxiousness in that anxiety is a fear of the future. It is worrying about, I worry about things that haven't happened, that may never happen, but I immediately go worst case scenario and I'm like, we're all going to die. It's just, I wish to be half glass full girl, but I am totally the half glass empty because of that gene mutation. But, and then if I add in folic acid, the synthetic B9, then I really go DEFCON 9 on the most ridiculous things. Now, my husband he has one copy for the MTHFR. He just got it from one parent. So his is a little bit less severe. And his is A1298C, which is more anxiousness. And anxious people, everything's got to be done right now. It's got to be done why wasn't it done yesterday? He's just wants it to be immediate. He hates standing in line. He has zero patience whatsoever. He can't go to Disney World or Universal or any of those roller coaster lines. He starts tweaking out. So
give me a sign.
And then there's people that have both mutations and they are just worried all the time. I mean, they're just spinning and can't move forward to save themselves. So when I say that to people, they're like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. That's totally me. And then that's where the depression piece came into play for me. That's where the panic attack, that combined with another gene mutation called COMT, that's where that came from. And then that's where my lower gut issues. So I kept thinking, gosh, all of a sudden, do I have food allergies? And I can't pinpoint it because on Monday I can eat something and feel fine, but on Wednesday I eat the same thing and then my stomach reacts. So it's okay, it's not an intolerance, it's not an allergy. What is this? It's MTHFR. It really affects your gut motility, how fast or slow your gut is. So if it's too slow, then you're constipated, you're bloated. If it's too fast, then you've got diarrhea. So, people don't like to talk about this stuff, but it's reality. We all do it. And when you've got it all figured out and you're taking the right things and you're eating the right diet, it just works and you just feel good. But I've talked with people that their guts, they thought it was normal to go to the bathroom once a week or once every 2 weeks because they're like, well, that's how all my family is. And it must be genetic. It must run in the family. And so you think because it happens to your mom that that's just how it is, but it's not. You can correct it and fix it with the right nutrients and diet.
So this is fascinating because it's so common to get your labs, your blood drawn and get your labs done. But from what you're saying, from that standpoint, when you had your labs done, it showed that, your vitamin B levels were great. So getting tested at the cellular level is much different. And you really find the answers to a lot of solutions that way that people that are getting their labs done just aren't getting.
Right. And then there's the genetic methylation test is great. It's a cheek swab. So it's super simple. You can do it for kids. And it literally comes to you in the mail. You do a cheek swab, you send it back and you get your results online. So, but for people that can't afford a genetic test like that, that's where, I always try to walk people through, okay, well, tell me what your symptoms are. And really that test is almost like a personality test in a way. And if they say, oh, I have this going on, that going on, I'm like, okay, I'd put money on it that you have this gene break or that gene break. I mean, even down to thyroid issues, high blood pressure, and that specific genetic marker also can be a nasty temper. So I always call it a snappy temper. Somebody got it from one parent, but it's nasty if they got it from two parents. And it's funny because people will admit it to me that I'm like, maybe you're a public figure and you're so nice to everybody and you're up on stage or you're a pastor in a church and everybody knows you and loves you, but your family at home or the people that are the closest to you, get you when you're not at your best. And wild how people go, oh my God, how did you know that about me just by seeing something on a test? I'm like, because it's genetics. It's wild, but you can calm it all down with the right supplements and diet changes. People think they're like, oh, take a multivitamin, and I'm like, but it works. I mean, in our house, like the vitamin Nazi in my house because like if I can tell when my husband's not had his vitamins. I can tell when my daughter's not had her vitamins. I can tell when my team doesn't have their vitamins because when you're on the right program, it just calms everybody down and they get along better and they feel better. And then people aren't calling in sick all the time. So it's, it really affects a lot of emotional, pieces from people.
Yeah, I would say that a huge percentage of people that I know or encounter on a day-to-day basis take a multivitamin or some sort of vitamin just because it's a vitamin. It's, it's labeled as a vitamin, whether it's synthetic or not, probably more times than not, it's synthetic. And so is that doing more damage than good? At that point, you want to get really tested first, know your body, understand your genetics, understand what your body needs before just diving into vitamins.
Yeah, if you can afford to do the testing, I do recommend getting a genetic methylation test for sure. Okay. And then, because again, it goes back to, you could take a simple methylated vitamin. So I always tell people, don't take a vitamin that has folic acid and do not take a vitamin that has cyanocobalamin. Those are the two, big red flags in a vitamin. It's in the majority of vitamins, unfortunately. So look for a good methylated one. But then for people that have the breaks from both parents, so if you have it just from one parent or no parent, then you could just take one simple multivitamin and you should be covered. You should be, they put enough zinc and B12 and magnesium and folate in there and you should be okay. But if you have the breaks from both parents, like me, then I am like super deficient in folate. So I need a little bit extra 5-methylfolate than what is given to me in the multivitamin. So that's why I take the extra capsules at night. If I had a red MTHFR, that's the one that's in the middle, and it affects thyroid and high blood pressure and the temper and upper gut issues like acid reflux and heartburn. If I had that I only have it from one parent. So the magnesium and zinc and B12 that's in my multivitamin is enough for me. But if I got it from both parents, then you need extra B12, extra zinc, and extra magnesium. But it's, there's a formula to it. It's not just like supplementing for the sake of supplementing and just grabbing a bunch of random stuff off the shelves because my friend said it was good or I read about it on a podcast or, I was listening to Sage and I think I just need extra stuff. No, it's better to get tested and try to figure it out. But at the very least, if you're going to just do basic minimum, a good methylated multivitamin is the way to go. But getting tested for sure helps you figure out exactly what works for you and doesn't.
What is the most common deficiency you see?
Probably D3. Probably D3, because I don't think anybody ever, when I was a kid, nobody talked about it. We just went out in the sun. Well, I grew up in the era of our parents kicked us out and told us not to come back until the sun went down. So I don't think any of us.
Yeah.
Because we were outside. Yeah. But nowadays, everybody's got their phones and their iPads and their devices and their Fortnite, and they're just inside, locked in a dark room. And it's a major issue.
So how quickly can you notice change in somebody if they are taking, the right approach, if they're receiving the right help? How quickly can they turn symptoms around and start to feel better?
So, I always have to be very careful about, I probably should have said this in the very beginning of the podcast, but I have no medical background whatsoever. Besides running, owning and running a clinic and making sure the bills are paid and people, are doctors and nurses and, awesome staff are hired, that I have no formal training. This is everything that I know is because I had to solve it for myself. But what helped me, literally within a couple of days after I removed folic acid from my diet, and I'll come back to that in a minute, but I removed folic acid, I removed the cyanocobalamin, the bad B12, stopped taking that multivitamin and stopped taking the different, supplements. There were energy drinks that had the B12 in it. There's all this stuff. Anyway, I'll go back to that. But within a couple of days of taking the right stuff and taking the right vitamin and taking the right diet, I felt so much better. I started sleeping normal again. The anxiety calmed down. No, I haven't had a panic attack since. I've never had the suicidal thoughts since. And, granted, I always tell people it can calm the symptoms. it does not, I never say fix or cure.
Right.
Because saying something's fixed or cured, you're just setting yourself up.
Right. That's great.
Right. It's just, it
Yeah.
calms it all down though. I know the difference between, again, like my husband, I love him dearly. He has a lot of energy in the morning. It's like he's got the capital H in ADHD. and it's a great superpower for him when he's focused. But if he doesn't take his vitamins, he is ping-ponging all over the place. He can't sit down and complete his emails. He can't finish a conversation. He's just like all over the place. So when he takes his vitamins, it just calms him down. And it's an interesting, we see it in kids all the time too. You know, they take the right type of vitamin, they eat the right diet, and they calm down. If you give a kid with ADHD red food dye and a bunch of sugar and a, you know, big old bagel or a bowl of cereal that's been fortified or enriched with folic acid, I am telling you, they're going to bounce off the walls, and then they go to school, and then everybody wonders why, you know, he's not focused at school and why he's, you know, in the principal's office and now he's got detention. And if you just started him off with eggs in the morning, something with protein instead of carbohydrates that are enriched or fortified with folic acid, it would make all the difference in the world. And it does. So when I went through my whole thing, I had to really look at the back of all the packaging of the carbohydrates that I was eating. So I did love a bowl of cereal. I grew up in that age. Bagels, bread, cookies, crackers, flour for pancakes or waffles, basically all the good stuff, pasta, rice. If you look on the back of the package and it says enriched white flour or enriched, even wheat, they do. And you even have to look out for organic. Sometimes it's organic enriched white flour pasta. If you can get away from things that say enriched because it's been enriched or sprayed with folic acid, the synthetic B12 or B9, and go towards more of an organic form or an imported. So think like pasta coming from Italy. If it's truly been imported or made in Italy, they don't spray their grain source with folic acid like the US does. And so that is usually what gives people stomach troubles and spinning out in their mind is by eating folic acid, and they can't convert or refine or process it, methylate it into 5-methylfolate that their body can understand. So you're talking like with MTHFR, there's a study and it says like 44% of the population has MTHFR. I believe it's over 60%. There are studies that go up to about 60%. I think it's even more than that. I have not done the studies on it. I have not done a personal study. I just know from the people coming into my office. But if you've got more than half of the population that's not able to convert something into a usable form, but we're spraying all of our grain source with that, then that's where anxiety and depression and postpartum depression. Think about women that are told to take high doses of folic acid when they're pregnant, because it's supposed to reduce neural tube defects in pregnant women for, babies in the womb. But I took it when I was pregnant with my daughter. I was sick as a dog the whole pregnancy, threw up like twice a day, could barely keep anything down. And then afterwards, I had the most severe postpartum depression. Even though my daughter was perfectly healthy, thank God, I was a mess. And then I realized as soon as I stopped taking the prenatal with the folic acid, I was fine and I was back to normal. So if you're pregnant or want to get pregnant or, thinking about it or you're nursing, I highly recommend taking a methylated prenatal vitamin. It's super crucial. Or if you don't have MTHFR, then you're fine with folic acid. You can make the conversion to 5-methylfolate, no problem. But it's super, super important to get tested to find that out because it just makes a world of difference and it's so easy to fix.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I was going to ask that too, because I didn't find out until my third pregnancy that most prenatals are folic acid and not folate. And I have
formula too. Formula is packed with folic acid, and then babies have acid reflux, and everybody's like trying to give them, like a form of like acid reflux medication or whatever. And if you just had folate, it would be fine. More formula companies, I think they're going to try to fix the formulas, hopefully in the US. we are trying to do that as well. But, all they have to do is just make it natural form and not a synthetic form. And then everybody would feel better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And from the difference between my first 2 pregnancies and my last was crazy. I was sick, like puking every day with my first, and had terrible acid reflux. In my third, I felt completely fine the entire time. So I personally, and I have not gone through the testing, but I feel like I am someone that needed the folate for sure. And I feel like for people that don't get the testing, would you say it's safe to just find folate instead of folic acid? I mean, it's better for you.
That's what I tell people. And they're like, oh, I can't afford all the testing. I totally get that. It's expensive. But if you just switch over to the natural form, it's not going to harm you. It's going to help you. So especially if women have, or anyone, men and women, have those symptoms, or your kids are bouncing off the walls and can't sit still, get them on a methylated multivitamin. They got tons of kids gummies out there that have them, and, get them on that, and they'll feel so much better, and their behavior will be so much better. I realize, like my daughter, I take her to the zoo. I give her goldfish and Cheerios, because that was just like a staple that I grew up on. But things were different when I grew up on them. They didn't spray it with folic acid. So I was fine when I ate it as a kid. But if I sat down, I grew up on Cheerios. If I sat down and tried to have a bowl of Cheerios right now, it would kill me. It would take me out. But I was feeding that to my daughter, and then we'd go home and she'd have these epic temper tantrums and meltdowns. And now I realize it's because she has MTHFR. If I had given her just organic versions of those snacks, she would have been fine. But I had no idea back then. So she's 17 now, and she is my best friend when she takes her vitamins. She is a total asshole when she doesn't.
That's so great.
Sure.
Everyone take your vitamins.
Yeah. So, but when she takes her vitamins, she's like so happy. Everyone's like, oh, teenage years are so hard. No, they're not. She knows better. She does not eat fast food. She doesn't eat processed food. She does not eat, the crumble cookies or any of these, things that all the pizza and mac and cheese. She does eat that. She just makes sure that the flour doesn't have folic acid in it, and then she's fine.
So let's talk about stress for a minute. What is stress doing to our bodies? I'm whether it's different for men and women, but and nowadays both men and women are really struggling with stress. But what is it doing to us?
So, I was thinking about how I was talking with Gary about that today, that for women, and men and women both experience a lot of stress, but there is, when you're a woman and you're running a household, you have kids, you have a husband, you have a job, our list is so much longer. No matter how much men try to help, it always ends up coming on women, because we're natural caregivers. And what happens is we end up with caregiver syndrome. There's an actual term for it. And it's because we put everyone else ahead of us, and we forget to take care of ourselves. So if you're giving your whole day away to someone else and you're not taking care of yourself, you end up with autoimmune issues. High levels of stress equal autoimmune issues. And it's because you're breaking yourself down. It's terrible. Gary actually was giving me a quote. He said that 82% of all autoimmune disease is found in women. And that's exactly caregiver syndrome. Wow. Because a weak defense equals more disease. So one of the things that I try to do, now granted, my daughter's 17 now, Gary's kids are all grown, everybody, when we started dating, because we were both married, divorced, had kids before we came together. So we got like the big modern family. And, but I remember when I met him and he told me the age of his kids, his youngest, I think Dylan was 11. And I was like, okay, good. At least they can all wipe their own butts. So I was like, I'm out of butt wiping stage. My daughter was 5, and I was like, I don't think I could go back to a newborn.
Go back to that.
But yeah, I'm motherly. My horoscope is Cancer. It's just like, that's what I was born to do, is just take care of other people. But as I've gotten older, I realized that the more stressed I am, then the less that I am being able to help anybody else. And so I really try to block off the mornings for me. So whether I need more sleep in the morning, or I need to go to the gym, or I just need like a quiet coffee with nobody talking to me, I really try to prioritize that time. But I recognize, you know, people with small kids and families and everybody trying to get out the door at the same time. I mean, that's a tricky thing to do. So, so maybe it's at night, maybe it's a bath with a hot tea at night and reading a book. But women have to prioritize themselves at some point throughout the day to boost their own immune system so that they can continue to take care of everybody else. But yeah, cortisol is not a bad thing. We always talk about cortisol like, you know, being like so terrible, but you know, yes, cortisol levels can rise from, you know, fear and worry and stress, but it's natural for your cortisol to rise in the morning. That's what kind of gets you up and out of bed in the morning. But when it takes over and then it doesn't stop, like fight or flight should be a temporary thing. You know, it shouldn't be like all day long you're in fight or flight mode. So we have to be careful about that. You have to find ways to de-stress and take care of yourself.
So Cassidy and I are both moms of little kids. She has 3 little kids. I only have 1, but I think it's common to feel wired, but also tired at the same time. And so is that because of that directly, that we're not taking time to de-stress? And so we have that anxiousness, we have that natural, you know, caregiver, we have to be doing all of these things, but we're not taking care of ourselves. Is that kind of why you would say women, and it doesn't just apply to women of, you know, young moms or anything, or young children, but is that what you would really say, to feel common, wired, but tired, especially in women?
Yeah, it's long periods of elevated cortisol. So just where you're not giving your body a break to recover. There's a whole thing about, so sympathetic state is your fight or flight state. And then parasympathetic state is your rest and digest. A lot of us are constantly living, especially just with like the way the world is right now, we're just constantly living in that sympathetic state, which kind of sounds funny, but it's the fight or flight. We have to find ways to move ourselves into a parasympathetic state and let our bodies rest and digest. Otherwise, yes, that's why you tend to be wired but tired. That's a great, you know, analogy. But then there's at night too, you could be so exhausted. You think, oh my God, I'm gonna get such a good night of sleep tonight because I am so exhausted from the day. And then your head hits the pillow and your mind wakes up, and then you just start thinking of all the things you didn't do on your list that day. When people tell me that's how they are, that's when I'm like, you probably have MTHFR, the gene break, or the gene break COMT, COMT. And every time I'm always right. I actually even tell people, I'm like, I'll pay for your test if you don't have this gene, because I am that right all the time. But that's another one. It's just, people with COMT breaks tend to be entrepreneurs. They tend to want to run their own business. They don't like to be told what to do. They're list makers. They feel better like crossing something off a list. I even know people that like take a shower just so they can like check it off and feel like they accomplished something that day. One thing to be careful of if you do have a COMT gene mutation, green tea is terrible for you. Some forms of black tea as well. That's going to just make things way worse, and it's going to, make it harder to fall asleep. Certain coffee beans, like I can't drink Starbucks, for instance, because there's something about the beans. It actually, their coffee makes me more tired than it does wake me up. I have to do like an organic coffee bean now because there's also mold and stuff in a lot of coffees. You have to be careful about that. And then quercetin. Quercetin got very popular as a supplement during COVID because it does boost immune systems. But if you have COMT, COMT people, quercetin is like an inhibitor of COMT. So it actually will make you feel worse. So I was in elderberry. Elderberry has high levels of quercetin. So I always tell people, watch out for raw onions, capers, and elderberry, which is just random. But, don't go down the rabbit hole in quercetin, because then you'll be like, oh my God, it's in everything.
Right.
You just pay attention to the things that it has high levels in, and that's like the green tea. And I was at the spa the other night. I was in London, and I got to go have a nice massage at the end of the day, and it was like that. I could go from the massage to my room and just go to sleep. And they offered me a hot tea at the end, and they had 3 different options. And one of them, she said, was a herbal tea, no caffeine, and she said it had lemongrass and ginger in it. And I was like, oh, that sounds great. I'll try that. Then I got up to go to the bathroom while she was getting it for me, and there was a menu, and it had all the ingredients of the tea. And what I realized is it had something called green rubiose, which I'd never heard of before. I'm sure I've probably had it before, and it's very healthy and natural. But green rubiose has quercetin in it. It's a form of green tea, even though it's non-caffeinated. And that, if I had drank that, thinking I was just having lemongrass tea, I would have been up all night long, probably wouldn't have gone to sleep that night. So that's how much it affects me. I've heard people have panic attacks drinking green tea if they have a comp tea break. So always think comp tea, be careful with like quercetin and green tea and things. So, okay, wired and tired. Yeah. So those would be, that's the reason that a lot of people feel that way.
Okay.
So I'm curious how, because you and Gary work together, you have your business together. Can you just talk to that a little bit? Like how you guys obviously work together well, but how do you divide roles and then set aside that time, when you get home to not talk about business?
So
Which I'm sure is hard.
hard because if you have a good day in the office is a good day at home, a bad day in the office is a bad day at home. And it's hard to get away from it especially when you're talking finances and employees, maybe he likes one employee and I don't think they're doing a good job and we could butt heads about that. When we first started our business, we struggled a lot with finances and we almost went bankrupt growing our business. And in fact, there was one month where I went to him and he's super positive. He is the glass, is always full guy. He's Mr. Optimistic. And I love that about him. And I do recognize that I can be kind of like negative Nancy with my, my anxiety and my gene breaks. But I also was like, I'm living in reality too. Like I'm looking at the bank account and I'm seeing the bills that are due and how much we have left and it's not working. And so I went to him and I was like, okay, next month we can either pay the payroll and keep the office open, or we can pay our mortgage, but we can't do both. And that was like a big eye-opening realization for us. And so we had to sell the house and move into, I had a little rental house because I was always doing Airbnb rentals. So I had a little house that I had to take off Airbnb and cancel the rentals and move our family of 6 into this teeny tiny little, I think it was like 1,500 square feet from his 6,000 square foot house. So that was a tough move. We went from 3 cars to 1 car. And it was just, those were hard times. And that taught us a lot about our relationship. And we call them peaks and troughs. We had a lot of really good times. We had a lot of really bad times, and we made it through. We just celebrated our 11th anniversary. Mm-hmm. And I think this last year has probably been our best. This is usually when people tank and it's their worst and they're thinking about contemplating divorce. I think because we've already been through all of it, we have really learned a lot about each other. But there was a book that we read called Rocket Fuel. And it was all about visionaries and integrators and the roles that they play. And Gary is very much a visionary. Like he's the guy who will write out 300 different ideas on a whiteboard. And he's like all excited, like we're going to get all of these ideas done. And then I was the integrator, the one that could actually help move a project forward. And unfortunately, I'd have to go to him and go, we have the time, money, energy, and staff for 3 ideas. So pick your top 3. And he'd be like, you're so mean, and we'd clash and butt heads. And it was tough, but he would stress me out with all his like running around and creating, all of this business. And I would stress him out by telling him, it was or wasn't working. But we needed that. We needed like the yin and yang of each personality to make it work. Because if we were both visionaries and we were both just coming up with a bunch of ideas, but not like just running around in circles and not moving something forward, then that doesn't work. And if we both were just like me, you know, and didn't have any business coming in the door, and what am I managing? If there's no business coming in, what am I doing? So it was we really started to understand each other's lanes and then start staying in the lanes and start appreciating each other's lane. So I was like, now I'm very much like, okay, I love all your ideas. We do have to figure out how, you know, which ones we're going to move forward with, but I respect him so much more and he respects me so much more instead of being like mad and angry at each other. So I think that book taught us a lot. And then I think also too, just we had to learn to be a team and that we weren't against each other. And I think it's just because we've such different personalities that sometimes there were moments where we were against each other and that didn't do any good. When we are on the same side and we are, you know, fighting for something together, like nobody can stop us. So we've learned a lot about how to be, you know, better teammates and business partners and also better husband and wife from, you know, just going through it and being honest about it. I would say we always lay our crazy out on the table. And I think the more he says, put the moose on the table. He read a book back in the day called Put the Moose on the Table. And that was always like, talk about the hard things. Don't skirt around it. Don't tell other people about it. Just put the moose on the table and then solve it together. Figure it out.
Oh, that's perfect. So do you guys, you're very intentional, it seems like, about, you know, working together, also protecting your marriage and everything that comes into play with that work-life balance. And so do you guys actively plan out your non-business time, or have you just kind of gotten into that routine where now that you've set boundaries, you know how each other operate, that it just kind of comes natural?
So we travel a lot for our business. We're bouncing all over the country, all over the world now. We do a lot of international trips. So what we did this year is we bought, it's called the Big Ass Calendar. Jesse, it's our, you know, he was on the podcast just recently, and he was like, you know, get the calendar, map it all out. And the goal was to make as much green and yellow on the calendar as possible. That was our thing. So green means being out in Colorado because that's our happy place. We love being in the woods and in the mountains. Right. And yellow is family time. So as much green and yellow as we can fit on the calendar. And then purple was work. So of course we would map out like work trips. So we went to London and we'll bring some of the kids with us, and so that gets to be good family time too. Thankfully, we all like to work together, which is great. But yes, and then I blocked all weekends because last year we worked just about every weekend. It almost was like, it just became a thing of working nights and weekends. I think it's always just been a thing with us, unfortunately. And I started to realize like, we don't have to do that anymore. We already did the building phase. Let's do the part where we enjoy it now. And we sat over Christmas break and actually took a break, which was lovely. And we sat down and we said, what is the most important thing? So having our weekends back to ourselves, making sure we do a lot of family outings or activities, or like every week we're doing a family dinner, because it's harder when all the kids get older and they have their own things, their own, you know, houses and stuff. Oh, I hear little kiddos. I love it.
Yeah. Yes, you'll probably hear some of that in the background.
No, it's awesome. It's great. And, and yes, we had to be intentional about our time because otherwise that time fills up really fast because everybody wants, to be around. And I love that. But I also just need my kids and my husband. And
right.
So he's been really good about it this year so far, which is awesome.
Great. Thank you.
That's awesome. So one last question before we wrap up our time together here. What does living well mean to you?
Living well for me means staying in, cooking. I love to cook. It's like one of my favorite things. It brings me such peace. I think my love language or whatever, I don't know if this is a thing in the love languages, but is like cooking for people. I love gathering people and cooking for them. So that, sleeping well, getting out and moving. I do love to just be active, especially when we're out in Colorado and it's summer and I could go hiking, or actually this winter we're sledding and skiing. Sledding will take it out of you with when you kids and you're trying to keep up. Like, there was a couple of moments I thought I was going down. So
It's a lot of work.
yeah, it was work. You dragging the kids and walking uphill, but it was so much fun. But yeah, just being active and eating whole diet, whole food diet, and making sure my sleep is on point. And I feel like a whole new person when I'm, not fighting time changes and stuff for traveling.
Yeah, absolutely. Sage, thank you for being on Threads of Wealth. This was a truly inspiring conversation. I learned a lot, and I know that everyone listening will take a lot of nuggets of wisdom out of this. So we are so grateful for your time today.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. I think we could talk to you all day long. So
I'd love to come back. Lord knows I've learned a lot in my world here. I didn't even touch on, you guys are too young, but I didn't even touch on piggy banks. That's my new thing. My new rabbit hole is trying to figure all of that out. So
I love that.
Well, I had like 20 more questions that I had that we just don't have. So we might have to do a few more episodes.
yeah, we'll do another episode. We'll just that to the next time. I would love to come back.
Perfect. That sounds great. Well, again, thank you so much for all of your time and your intentionality with this conversation today. I know everybody will learn lots. I know we did. So thank you for joining Threads of Wealth, and we will see you next time.
Thank you. Have a great day, guys.